Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 8 of my favourite 150 films not ranked, because that would be ridiculous, as of 2020. Again, this is interactive, so you can comment on my choices, suggest your own choices by the same directors. And yeah, this has been kind of a fun exercise, but obviously also headache inducing. But it will be interesting to see what the list looks like in, say, a year or two. So let's make a start. Again, it's another 15 films. We'll start with Out of the Past, probably my favourite Jacques Tourneur film, from 1947, even though I've always preferred the alternate title that it went under for a few years, which is Build My Gallows High. I think that gives more of a clue of the kind of tone of the film rather than Out of the Past. The reason that I love the film so much is because it has just a wonderful fatalistic attitude. Obviously film noir was a little fatalistic, but they still had, you know, with the Hays Code, sometimes you'd still get happy endings. But Out of the Past is relentlessly grim. It's so wonderfully fatalistic. Robert Mitchum knows that he's doomed from pretty much the get-go, and he knows there's nothing he can do about it. And I just kind of love films like that, because let's be honest, that's what life is. You're trapped, you're doomed, and there's nothing you can do about it. This features an earlier performance by Kirk Douglas, who, before he kind of became, or he took lots of kind of hero roles or heroic roles, he did play a few slime balls in his career. Obviously Ace in the Hole with Billy Wilder as an example. I Walk Alone opposite Burt Lancaster, which is another really nice noir, where he plays the same kind of character, a kind of sleazy slime ball who's made it big, and he certainly knows how to flex his chin in this film too. It's kind of jumps backwards and forwards in time. Robert Mitchum again just gives one of his definitive performances. Again, Mitchum was a guy who said he wasn't really an actor, he just turned up, spoke lines and then went away again. But he's just so good in this. Jane Greer is the love interest that brings him down, forces him to do things you don't really want to do, but it's film noir. But I just love that fatalistic tone. That's when noir's at its best. Raw Deal, Bantry Man with George O'Keeffe's another good one. Fatalistic fun. Next is Bergman's Through a Glass Darkly. Obviously this is the Bergman box. Through a Glass Darkly, made in 1961. The first part of the Faith trilogy, preceding Winterlight and The Silence. It's such a great film from a filmmaking perspective. There's only 4 actors who are all really good in it. Max von Sydow, Gunnar Bjornstrom, Harry Anderson, and the other guy. Bergman was going through a chamber music period, and he writes the film like chamber music. There's only 4 characters. They get scenes with pairs of them or all four of them. Again, this was the first one he shot on Faroe, which would end up being the island that he lived in his latter years. His shot composition is stunning in this film. The scenes on the shipwreck are just wonderful and very reminiscent of some scenes in Tarkovsky's Ivan's Childhood. It's a story about mental illness. It has the well-known kind of Bergman trope of the role of the artist. Gunnar Bjornstrand is a writer who is trying to write a book about his daughter's mental illness, and kind of the role of the artist exploiting tragedy. A lot of Bergman's films are about art as well as the actual story. Again, it's dark and grim. It also has humour, but it's just so well shot, so well made, and it kind of proves that you don't need pyrotechnics and you don't need dazzling camera movements and stuff. If you just have excellent compositions, well written characters, a compelling story, you can make films on pretty small budgets. Again, this was the period where Bergman would do theatre half the year, do a film the other half of the year. An extraordinary workaholic output. And Through a Glass Darkly has always been one of my favourites. To do with the theme, but obviously just from a technical standpoint, it's just so well made. And again, I'm doing the podcast, a series with Nazrin Prod, and we'll look at a couple of Bergman films. So go check that out if you haven't already. We've already discussed Through a Glass Darkly, and I kind of mentioned there that I think Bergman is actually underrated from a visual standpoint. I don't think, yes, he gets credit for his big themes and his work with actresses, giving women really good roles, but I think he is underrated as far as how his films actually look and his shot composition and use of the camera. Again, he perhaps doesn't have a dynamic camera, but his compositional eye is excellent. So that's Through a Glass Darkly. Next, slightly different tone, Ernst Lubitsch's The Shop Around the Corner, which bizarrely still doesn't have a Blu-ray. You'd have thought Kino Lorber would be all over this. They have Bluebeard's wife. And it's the fact that it was remade as You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan that you'd have thought there'd be a Blu-ray. Hopefully one day, but again, please correct me if there is actually a Blu-ray. This is actually, I think it's a Chinese DVD that I got. It's just one of Lubitsch's finest, starring James Stewart and Margaret O'Sullivan. I could be wrong. Again, it's set in the same kind of milieu as To Be or Not to Be. It's a department store this time instead of an acting troupe. Again, Lubitsch regulars pop up and are absolutely wonderful. The guy who plays the Wizard of Oz is in it. Again, sparkling dialogue about romance between two people who don't actually like each other, but they don't know they're sending letters to each other, but they don't know it. It's just a wonderful film, and for some reason it's still not available on Blu-ray. Unbelievable. Next up, it's Jodorowsky's Santa Sangre, which, if you know Jodorowsky, narrative structure isn't always his strong point, but this is a Jodorowsky film that almost follows a narrative, and is his most kind of conventional. It's visually stunning in colour. Obviously the Jodorowsky set is out August 24th. Yeah, Jodorowsky films you really have to watch. It's hard to describe them, but this one is about a young boy whose parents run a circus. The father has an affair. The wife gets his revenge. Then the wife gets revenged. Cut to later, the boy's in a mental asylum. He escapes and teams up with his mother. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the film because that would be spoiling it really. You really need to watch the film. It is an experience. Again, with Jodorowsky, there's visuals that will just blow your mind. And again, this one actually has a kind of narrative, or it follows a narrative structure. It has, again, just moments of deranged genius, as we've come to expect from Jodorowsky. Next is Nicholas Ray's Johnny Guitar, which is unusual in the sense it's a film about women, and women in westerns generally are kind of sidelined, or the love interest, but Sterling Hayden actually plays the love interest. The film's called Johnny Guitar, which would make you assume that the film's about Sterling Hayden's character, who's called Johnny and carries a guitar. But it's not. It's about Mercedes McCambridge and Joan Crawford. It's in dazzling Technicolor, almost too Technicolor. It's just like, it's a fever dream kind of film. McCambridge and Crawford are just magnetically deranged. Crawford probably edges it, but Mercedes McCambridge is a close second. Again, it's a complicated western, it's a colourful western. Some of the supposedly goodies wear black, which obviously confused western audiences, because the villains wear black and the goodies wear white, but not in this film. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Just a stunning film, again with quite a lot of Nicholas Ray's films not really appreciated at the time. It was only once those pesky French New Wave guys got a hold of it that kind of got a bit more attention, but it's just a wonderful film. Next is another wonderful film. This is Satyajit Ray's Charulata, or The Lonely Wife. Again, I'm doing a Satyajit Ray season on the channel, or series on the channel. He is, for me, the most underrated director in world cinema. Again, because lots of his films aren't actually available, and very much like John Sayles, the synopsis of his films perhaps aren't the sexiest or the most exciting. This one, stars Sumitra Chatterjee, who's his regular leading man, and Madhabi Mukherjee, and it's essentially a cousin comes to visit the family and kind of forms a relationship with the wife. The husband is too busy at work. It's just a beautiful little film again. Simple story, told beautifully, shot beautifully, acted beautifully, and that's pretty much Satyajit Ray summed up. He wrote, directed, did the music. It's another, for me, a quintessential Satyajit Ray, but it doesn't sound that sexy, but it's awesome. Next is Kubrick's Paths of Glory, or How I Stopped Worrying and How to Love the Trenches. This is a film that was banned in France for a lot of years because it's based in World War One and it's about the execution of 3 men as a symbol for a failed attack on a hill. Kirk Douglas plays Colonel Dax, who tries to defend the 3 men and stops the execution. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. This is Kubrick's kind of first, I know The Killing is kind of a proto-Kubrick, but Paths of Glory was the first one, I think, that his visual style, his technical nonce really kind of showed up. It's just a beautiful film. It's only like 88 minutes. It's a short film, which not all Kubrick films are. It's economical. I mean, it has an obvious message that we've kind of learned over the years. Yeah, just one of Kirk Douglas's best performances. Again, it's kind of a million miles away from his performance in Out of the Past. And one of Kubrick's best. I'm kind of a weird Kubrick fan. I don't love some of the Kubrick films that other people love, but it's all taste. Next is Sidney Lumet's 12 Angry Men, his debut, not a bad debut. And it's one of the best films in one location. Pretty much 2 rooms, or 1 room and a bathroom. It's right up there with The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, as far as ensemble casting and how we learn what the characters are, who they are as people, without having like a backstory for each of them, which would lengthen the 96-minute running time. Again, his use of blocking, the shots, how the characters relate to each other in the room is really good. I've often thought, because it's Henry Fonda, everybody assumes, he gets the kid off and that's, but what if he was like actually paid to get the kid off, and it's actually more sinister and the kid was actually guilty, but Henry Fonda was paid to get him off, so to speak. But that's just the cynical part of me. I did a double take video quite a while ago on this and the TV movie remake with Jack Lemmon in the Henry Fonda role, which again has another pretty amazing cast. William Peterson, Cletty Williamson, amongst others. Courtney B. Vance. It was directed by William Friedkin. Pretty much the same script, but it's just not the same film. 12 Angry Men is a trademark if you're ever looking to make a film in one room, or if you're looking to make a film in an enclosed space with an ensemble cast. 12 Angry Men is an impressive blueprint. Next is The Man with the X-Ray Eyes by Roger Corman. Again, this is a film that I grew up with, saw on Moviedrome on BBC Two, which I've mentioned countless times in this channel, but a lot of my favourite films I saw through Videodrome late night on a Sunday evening. Late night on a Sunday evening. It's not a long film, it's about an hour and 20. This is the beautiful Second Sight release. It's got really good extras. It's got a Roger Corman commentary, which is what you want, because Roger Corman's just a fascinating guy. It's also got an interview with Kat Ellinger, a commentary by Tim Lucas, also Joe Dante and a Trailers from Hell. There's a poster and a booklet. It's a film that on the surface is just like a cheesy exploitation film, but there's so many levels to the film, just like the levels of the visible spectrum that Ray Milland, scientist, peels away with his special eye juice. He gets to see things and beyond things. It's just packs so many ideas into 80 minutes. It's well worth your time if you just think, oh, it's a cheesy Roger Corman film. It's Corman at his best. It's about so much. Again, I did a random review of it once when the second sight release dropped, as the kids say. It's just a great wee film, one of Ray Milland's best performances. Corman actually mentions that Ray Milland, looking back in his career, he really mentioned two films, and that was The Man with X-Ray Eyes and Billy Wilder's Lost Weekend, which he won the Oscar for. So it has the Ray Milland seal stamp of approval. Next, I'm going to cheat again and include all the Baby Cart films, Lone Wolf and Cub, which is strictly a cheat because it's 6 films, but I'm doing it anyway. If it's good enough for Shklovsky, it's good enough for Baby Cart. So you get Sword of Vengeance, the first film. You get Baby Cart, The River Styx, which is probably my favourite one. Baby Cart to Hades, Baby Cart in Peril, Baby Cart in the Land of Demons, and White Heaven and Hell. This tells the story of Ito Agami, the imperial executioner who gets betrayed and has to go on the run with his son, Diagoro. It's just wonderful. If you're a fan of Arterial Spray, you came to the right place. This is one of Criterion's best box sets, you could argue, because it's not actually huge, which saves on space. It's spine number 841. It's just, the films are all like 85 minutes long, so even if it perhaps doesn't take your fancy, you know, they're bright and breezy and very slashy and bloody, and you can go on to the next one. It's just an absolute blast. It does actually include Shogun Assassin from 1980, which was an American release of the first 2 films, but they took out all the story and just put in all the fights, so it's just like an Arterial Spray orgy, but you lose all the character stuff because the character stuff's very important. They're actually quite moving in a strange way. That's Lone Wolf and Cub, or Baby Cart. And next is Brazil, Terry Gilliam. This is the Criterion DVD, which is a 3-disc, but I also have the Criterion Blu-ray, spine number 51. For me, this is Gilliam's best film. Obviously it's famous for the huge fight with the studio he had, because they released a bastardized 94-minute version with a happy ending, which is included on these releases, which is fascinating. The documentary, What is Brazil, is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, we all know the story. Dystopian future, blah blah blah, Jonathan Pryce, blah blah blah, necrophilia, blah blah blah, Robert De Niro, Ian Holm, another great Ian Holm performance. I just think it's, for me, it's his film that hangs together the best. It's still not perfect because it's Terry Gilliam, and I don't think he's capable of making a perfect film. Obviously you can correct me in the comments, but Brazil, it's got a great closing theme that will stick in your head for years. Michael Palin's fantastic, and an unusual performance by him, or a role. Great film. Speaking of great film, Das Cabinet Das Dr. Caligari, which in my head, I always think it's a Murnau or it's a Pabst. But it's Robert Vina. It's Robert Vina's Divina, Dr. Caligari. From 1920. A film that is still inspiring filmmakers. You know, there's a lot of silent films that are inspirational, but when you watch them, they're just okay films, or they're just good films. Dr. Caligari is still a special film. Obviously influential production design. The sets are completely unrealistic. Complete nightmare fuel, complete artificial, but they still seem right, because the thing is, essentially it's the logic of a dream or the logic of a nightmare. I'm not biased just because Conrad Veidt's in it. The Masters of Eureka, again, where they excel is the prints on their silent films, and this print looks absolutely gorgeous. Again, it's got a documentary about Caligari. Another essay by David Cairns, part on the restoration, and of course a 44-page booklet. The artwork's fantastic. I mean, the twist ending's wonderful. It's spine number 92 for those keeping score at home. It's just a beautiful, stunning film, and it's still stunning. The silent cinema that I like, strangely enough, is the darker stuff, the more expressionistic stuff, the more kind of dreamlike, twisted stuff. You know, Sunrise, for example, is voted as one of the greatest films of all time. To me, it's a good film, but it's just because I'm not really interested in that subject matter. I would much rather watch Dr. Caligari or Faust or Nosferatu or Vampire. You know, City Girl is a good film. Diary of a Lost Girl, good film. But for me, not great silent cinema the way the films that I've mentioned are, just because it's just a matter of taste, and I'm kind of more drawn to the expressionistic kind of darker stuff. Next is Late Spring by Ozu, which is Criterion 331. Again, I'll admit I'm not the biggest Ozu fan, only because I've only seen 2 of his films. I have a pile of his stuff in my backlog. You know, Tokyo Story's great, but I prefer Late Spring. Again, a bit like Saijit Ray, his films are fairly simple as far as the synopsis is concerned, but it's about the people, the relationships with each other. This one has his regular Chishu Ryo and Setsuko Hara playing father and daughter. Again, it's a simple story, but it's just done so beautifully. It has my favourite apple peeling scene in cinema history. Again, I need to expose myself, so to speak, to more Ozu films, and then I'll have a better picture of the man's work, because I can't really talk about him because I've only seen 2 of his films. But Late Spring is a really classy piece of cinema, and quite beautiful, from 1949. Don't worry, just 2 left. The Invisible Man. This is the Alex Ross artwork steelbook. Again, I'm a bit weird, as you might have guessed. So this is my favourite Universal monster, even though I do like Dracula and the Bride of Frankenstein and the Wolfman. I love Lon Chaney's, again, fatalism and depressed Wolfman. But The Invisible Man, again, the Universal Blu-rays are just stunning. You wouldn't think this film is as old as it is, because the prints are absolutely beautiful. Claude Rains is wonderful. The rant that he goes on that he's going to control the world and people will kneel at his feet because he's invisible is just absolutely wonderful. It's got touches of comedy. Sometimes it hasn't aged particularly well. The effects are still impressive to me. Again, maybe just a little bit strange. But they're better than CGI now. They're more realistic. Again, it's a compact, economical film like all those Universal monster films are pretty much. They're not bloated 2-hour films. But there's just something about The Invisible Man that I've always really responded to a little bit more than the other ones. Again, I do love the other ones, but The Invisible Man, for some strange reason, is my favourite. Maybe it's Claude Rains and that voice, but it's fantastic. I'll make them kneel and cower because I'm invisible. It's a dream we've always had. Next is actually the second Nicholas Ray film on this episode, and it's on Dangerous Ground, which is the Premiere Collection edition. Again, this is a film that I saw late night in BBC Two. Again, it might have been Moviedrome. I've got a feeling it might have been Moviedrome as well. It's a film that was pretty much forgotten about for years. I had to track it down on like a Spanish DVD before, and I was so pleased when this actually came out in Blu-ray. It's a film that was kind of cut up and butchered, and it has that kind of feel. But I kind of love that about it. It's rough around the edges. It perhaps doesn't quite work, but at its core is another essential Robert Ryan performance. Ida Lupino is fantastic. So Robert Ryan plays a cop who's essentially Dirty Harry but without the charm. He happily beats up people, to get information out of them. He is damaged. There's a nice contrast between him and his partner. His partner has a wife and kids and kind of leaves his work at work, whereas Robert Ryan's a single guy and he carries everything around with him. He carries the scum of the earth on his shoulders. It's a great performance of Robert Ryan. He goes too far in the big city and he gets punted upstate to look into a murder. He gets involved with Ida Lupino, who's a blind lady, and the film kind of slows down and takes a different turn, and it's lyrical, it's poetic, it's quite beautiful. The second half takes place in the snow, so it has a different kind of feel. It's one of the great snow films. If you haven't seen it, it's one of Nicholas Ray's best. Like I said, it's one of Robert Ryan's finest performances. Again, that kind of clenched jaw anger is about to burst, which he did so well. And things like Crossfire. Yeah, it's another Nicholas Ray film that deserves your attention. So thanks very much for watching episode 8 of my favourite 150 films, obviously not ranked, and hopefully you'll join me for episode 9 and 10. So thanks very much for watching. Again, leave your comments what you think about the films that I've mentioned, or alternate titles by the same directors or the same actors, and hopefully we'll see you again. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying thanks very much for watching and farewell.